Good morning, everyone. In this video, I will try to give my perspective and explain projection and longevity as best as I can. The reason I'm doing this is because I've been studying perfumery for a year and my perspective on this has shifted drastically over the last few months, and I wish somebody told me about projection on longevity like this. This video hopefully will explain projection on longevity once and for all in a way that makes you understand it. Let's start by writing down the two things we care about, right? We care about longevity and we care about projection. I mean, we want our perfume to last long and to project well. Or at least if we don't want it to project, we want to control the projection. If we're making a skin scent, we want to control projection so it's not too high. The first thing to understand is that longevity and projection are two opposing forces. You cannot max out both. I know there are perfumes that have done both, but usually you are trading one for the other. Now the second thing, let's define what we actually mean. Longevity. When we say we want longevity, what we really mean is we want this perfume to last long. And I assume for most people that means, not 2 hours. We want this to last at least 4, maybe 8. So we would say, I want this perfume to last at least 4 hours, ideally 8 to 16, longer if possible. But what does this mean? Let's not stop at the surface level answers and let's dig deeper. What we're saying by this is we want these materials to be on our skin 4 to 16 hours. That's what we're saying. I want these particular materials in this particular liquid, the materials, the atoms, these molecules, I want them to keep projecting off of my skin for 8, 16, 24, whatever is your number. Let's dig even deeper. When we're saying this, we want to increase longevity, we're really saying we want to increase the time for which there are materials projecting off my skin. The reason we're digging deeper and trying to rephrase this is because if we just say, oh, I want more longevity for my perfume, you don't really know what you're saying. Because you're saying you want something abstract, such as longevity, but what does that really mean? Okay, it means I want this to last 16 hours. But that means for these 16 hours, what it means to last. It means I want this material to keep projecting off my skin, not just I want this to exist for 16. And now we're getting to the final point, which is if we want to increase longevity, it means we want the evaporation to be slower. Therefore, if we want to increase longevity, we either need to slow down evaporation, because evaporation is what makes the material get off the skin and, after some time you have nothing left. So if we slow down evaporation, we naturally increase longevity. The other way to increase longevity is by adding more material. If you have one piece of this long-lasting material, it's going to last one piece of time. If you have 5 pieces of this long-lasting material, it will last longer because there's simply more material and it will evaporate one bit of a time. And the third way to increase longevity is to simply make the material easier to detect for your nose. Now, before we get to projection, I'll quickly show you and explain what is odor threshold in a non-scientific way, just a simple way to understand it. So, odor detection threshold is how much of this material you need for your nose to recognize it, to say, oh, I smell it now. There it is. Brain, pay attention to this. If I remember correctly, it's measured by parts over unit of air. And it simply means how much of this material you need in 1 cubic meter of air, cubic centimeter, whatever, just parts, unit of air. And if you have a low threshold, it means you need just 1 part for your brain to recognize it. High threshold means your brain needs way more of this to say, oh, there it is, pay attention. And each material will have this detection threshold. For the synthetic materials, you can find this information in the technical data sheets and other data sheets for that material. You can find this information online. For naturals, you can find some of this information, but it's not super accurate from what I know. But the point is that even if you can't know this threshold, it's still there. And what that looks practically, why we're talking about this threshold when we're talking about longevity. Because we said we want this to last longer. And we said that one way is to slow evaporation. The second way is to add more material so there's simply more on the skin, and it takes longer for all of it to evaporate. Just like if you have one drop of water in a cup, it will evaporate in like 5 minutes. But if you have full cup of water, it will take days to evaporate. The same is here when we put perfume on our skin. If you have just a little bit, it will evaporate faster and not last that long. If we put more, it will last longer. And a side note is when you're testing your perfumes, don't do like I did, put like tiny little spray and then wonder why does it disappear so quickly. Put a lot. Put like 4 sprays, 5 sprays of that 2 ml spray bottle, and you will instantly feel that it lasts longer because you simply have more material on skin. But a third way to increase the perceived longevity is to make it easier to smell, so that even when there's little on the skin, you can still smell it. And to be fair, this should have been increasing longevity, increase the time for which these materials can be smelled. That would be the better way to write that. Okay, and let's quickly draw an arm. Let's say this is, your arm. I know it's very ugly, but imagine this blue molecules here. This is your perfume. You spray it on your skin, it's on your wrist. How does the detection threshold affect this? The first one, slower evaporation. Let's say it evaporates slowly, right? Slowly. You'll smell it. If you put your nose on top of this, you will smell it. Evaporates slowly. Second one, evaporates slowly. You smell it all this time because it's still there. But if it evaporates completely, you can no longer smell it. Right? Okay, that's the slowness. If it evaporates fast, you smell it for just a little time. Now let's talk about a more material case. Let's say we have 3 molecules here. It evaporates 1, 2, 3. It takes, 3 seconds to evaporate, maybe 3 hours. Now let's say we add more of this material, more of these molecules on the skin. Now it takes 1, 2, 3, 4. We can still smell it because there's more material and it still keeps evaporating. It doesn't evaporate all at once, just like the full cup of water. That should make sense. Why adding more material means you will smell this for longer. Now finally, let's look at the last case about easier to detect. So we said that with low threshold we need less of the material to smell it. With high threshold we need more. This one is blue because it's high threshold. Let's take this and duplicate. So it's 10, right? Now we have 10 of this and our nose can detect this. Okay, some of this will start evaporating. Okay, this is gone. Now we have 9 left. But the threshold is 10. It means that now our nose will start to struggle to detect this. Now this evaporates. Now we have 8. It feels very weak because we can't smell it much. 7 left, 6 left, 5 left. We barely smell anything, even though there's still a lot of molecules on the skin. But what would happen if all of these were low threshold materials? Now, even though we have 4 on the skin, we can smell it strong because previously we had 10 and the threshold is 10. So we were on the line. Now the threshold is 1 and we have 4 molecules on the skin. So they keep evaporating. And let's say this is a slow evaporating material, so we smell it for a very long time. Now we have 3 left. We can still smell it because threshold is 1. 2 left. We can still smell it twice as strong as threshold is 1. Now there's 1 left. We can still smell it. Even though there's 1 tiny molecule on the skin, we can still smell it because the threshold is so low for our nose to detect it. But there's one thing to keep in mind is that everybody's nose is different, and for your nose, some materials will have higher threshold, meaning you need more of it to smell, and some of it you need less. I hope that explains the longevity and the techniques we can use to make it last longer. This is not about adding some magic ingredient, because if you add something like DPG, which is known to help with longevity, it's gonna do one of these things. It's gonna slow evaporation or something like that. It's gonna stop the other materials from evaporating as fast. But you could simply add more material. This is why people say if you have a longer base, then your perfume will last longer, is because you have more material in the base, more material that will last long time. It's not about the category of being a base note, it's about the fact that this specific note like vanillin or benzoyl resinoid or these musks, they on their own last a long time, and by having more of these molecules on your skin, you can make sure that the perfume lasts longer. But a thing to keep in mind is that what you will smell is these long-lasting molecules. You cannot have bergamot combined with something like benzoyl resinoid, and you cannot have them both stay for 16 hours. Yes, the benzoyl resinoid will slow down the evaporation of bergamot, but it's not going to increase the lifespan of bergamot 5 hours. The reason some perfumes seem like they smell the same from top to base is because the materials themselves smell like that. So maybe they have bergamot at the top, then they have some kind of citrusy floral heart note that lasts 4 hours on its own, and then maybe they have some kind of citrusy base wood resin, something like that, which on its own feels like it's citrusy. And I say this word loosely because a citrus is citrus and there's really no such thing as a base citrus. But the character of that material might be similar in feeling. So it just feels like it evaporates slowly, but in fact, those are different materials that you're smelling over time. Now, on the other hand, let's look at projection. When we say I want this perfume to project, what we mean is I want to smell this perfume across the room, which means I want this perfume to travel, which means I want this perfume to be in the air. This is usually what you would think when you say I want this to project well. You say I want this to travel, I want to smell this across the room, I want this to be in the air, around me, and easy to notice. Let's look at what that means for us. Both for longevity and projection, the detection threshold is affecting both longevity and projection. Because if something is easier to detect, it means you can detect it for longer when there's less on the skin, which means the longevity and the lifespan feels like it's longer. And same with projection. If something is easier to detect, you can smell it around you easier when it's in the air because you need just one tiny piece. Therefore, if we want this perfume to be in the air and easy to notice, it must be easier to detect, which in turn just means low threshold. Same would be for the detection in the longevity. The second thing is we want fast evaporation. There's also something called vapor pressure. What does this mean? Let's come back to these examples. We have a woman here. She has a perfume on her shoulders. And let's say she walks past us, right? At some point, the wind and the friction in the air will cause some of these molecules to stay behind, right? She'll keep walking. She will keep leaving molecules in the air and she'll walk away. Now let's say our nose, we go and we smell this thing in the air because there's just one molecule and it has a low detection threshold. If this material has a high detection threshold, we will not smell it. It's still in the air, but we won't smell it because it's just too little for us to notice. So the two ways we can make sure we smell it is if we either have more in the air or we have stronger materials in the air. Ideally, they would be working hand in hand and you would have both something that's easy to detect and something that evaporates quickly. If I understand correctly, how quickly something evaporates is a bit different from how far it travels, because the pressure is like the pressure within the atoms, which like pushes it further away and stronger away from the skin. You might be asking, how can I know if my material has high or low vapor pressure? How can I know how long it lasts? How can I know all of these properties? You don't need to think about it in very scientific terms, but you could think of it like this. If you have your bottle and you need to get really close to the bottle to smell the material, it probably doesn't have high vapor pressure and it's probably not going to evaporate very quickly. But if you put it on your table and you open the bottle and you leave the room and you come back and you can smell it, or you just hold it in your hand some distance away and you can still smell it without getting close, It probably has high vapor pressure. It's probably going to evaporate more quickly and project more in the air. Same thing with the detection threshold. If you have it far away from you and you can still smell it by like moving it a little bit, and I move it a little bit like this and I can smell it easily, it probably has a low detection threshold. But if you need to lean close, then that would mean it has a high threshold and you need more of it to smell it. Finally, you might be asking, what does all of this mean? Why should I care? How can I practically use this knowledge? How does it all work together? The idea that shifted my perspective is when I realized that it doesn't matter how perfect my triangle is, my top mid base balance. It doesn't matter what is the structure, if I use some kind of magic material, because the perfume will only last as long and project as well as the materials individually. You simply need to use the right kind of materials. It doesn't really matter the balance or the structure as much as you think. What matters way more is if the materials themselves are strong, if they project well, and if they last long. What I mean is, if none of your materials in your formula last longer than 4 hours, you cannot expect your perfume to last 16 hours. You need to use these crazy materials that last days and weeks on the strip if you want your perfume to last that long. But by using those materials, you're also using the smell that they bring. And you cannot get rid of that. You cannot have the strength of a patchouli without having the actual patchouli smell. You cannot have the stickiness and the fixation on longevity qualities of labdanum and benzoyl resinoid without having the resinoid smell. And this is where the art of perfumery comes in, is where you both try to select materials that perform well and last long, but also that match your formula and match the thing you're trying to create. For example, if I'm trying to create a woody fragrance, maybe I don't want benzoyl resinoid because it smells sweet and I just don't want that character, that smell in my perfume, even in the dry down. So even though it lasts a long time, I may not want to use it, so I will need to find a woody material or something complementary for this smell that I'm trying to create that lasts a long time. Or if I'm trying to create a musky smell, again, I may not want a benzoyl resinoid. I may not want woods. I will want musks that last 24 plus hours on the skin. Same with projection. If I want my perfume to project well and fill the room and be a beast mode fragrance like Megamod, I cannot use weak materials. I cannot magically make this perfume project if none of these materials chemically, physically have this capability. A good example about this would be aldehydes, like C12MNA, C10. They are easy to notice. You just dip a little bit in the material, put it on the strip, and you will smell it in the room. So if you use this material in your perfume, it will project, it will evaporate, but the thing that you will smell and the thing that will evaporate is mostly this material. Sure, it will pick up some other molecules along the way, so it's not like the only material that you will smell is C12MNA. You'll also smell the bergamots and the other and some of the base materials that come with it, but mostly it's going to be this material because it's this material that's evaporating. It's this material that chemically wants to escape the skin. If there's anything you take away from this video, it's the understanding that if you want something to last long, you need to use materials that last long, but you're not just getting their longevity, you're also getting their scent. Therefore, when you buy materials, buy the ones that you like the smell of, not just because they last long. Because if you use them and you don't like them, yes, you will last long, but you will not like the smell. And you will keep wondering, why can't I create what I like and it lasts long? But it's just you're using the wrong material. Same with projection. If you want this perfume to fill the room, you just need to use the kind of materials that fill the room on their own. And the art of perfumery is where you decide which of these strong materials I'm going to combine in a way that projects. And the art of perfumery is not how do I make this project, It is which of these projecting materials am I going to put together. Projection is like a side effect of you using the right materials. But the art is not just in making something project, it's making something that you like the smell of project. Because sometimes you might have materials that you like the smell of, but they don't really project. It's not because you did something wrong technically, it's not that you mixed them in some kind of wrong order, it's just that they chemically and physically do not have the capability. So you should have used materials that have the ability to project well. There's one more important thing we should talk about, and that is hard notes. This is probably even more important than the first two things we talk about. And the reason is because hard notes is where your perfume truly lives and where your perfume is truly noticed. Think about it this way. Top notes, yes, they project like crazy. You will spray it and you will smell it across the room, but they last 10 minutes, 1 minute, 15 minutes. If you want your perfume to last just this long, well, good. Just use citruses and types of materials that don't last too long. But usually people want their perfumes to last hours. When you think about top notes, hard notes, base notes, don't think about it as categories, think about it as longevity. And it's relative to your perfume. In one perfume, rose can be a top note because there's nothing that lasts shorter amount of time, but in another perfume, a rose can be a base note because it's the longest lasting material. I know the top hard base can be confusing and make you feel like you have to divide things in categories, so I suggest you simply think in lifespan. Divide your perfume in lifespan. How long does your shortest material last? How long does your longest material last? For example, 15 minutes, 4 hours, 8 hours, 16 hours. Think of your materials in this kind of diagram. On the y-axis, think of projection. So if it sits close to skin, or if it projects like a distance away, hand distance away, or if it projects like crazy and fills the room. If a material lasts less time, it will naturally project more, usually. When you map out your formula like this, you can kind of see where the perfume lives. I'll try to give you multiple examples. For example, let's say you make a citrus fragrance. It might last 15 minutes, but it will fill the room. And honestly, these materials should overlap because they're both going to fill the room. They're all here. This is going to be your fragrance. This axis would be like perception, strength, or something like that. And therefore, you can see if you have a citrus fragrance, it's going to be perceived a lot, but for a very short time, like 15 minutes, because it's just the chemical and physical nature of this material. Now, on the other hand, let's say we have a very musk-heavy fragrance. So let's say we have galaxolide. It's going to last a long time. On the strip, it can last days. Habanolide. Let's say we have ambretolide. Maybe we have a little bit of lemon in the opening, and maybe we have lavender in the heart. Sure, it's going to project a little bit, right? But in the opening, because of the lemon and because of the lavender. But the musks will not project because they will be sitting close on the skin for a very long time. Okay, but here we would smell the lemon very strong, then it would drop to lavender, and then just the musks, but it's going to sit close to skin. And actually for this one, a better way would be, so something like this. This is going to be your citrus fragrance, 15 minutes and then nothing. Here, if it's musk heavy, you would have 15 minutes of lemon, then a few hours of lavender, and then very close to skin musks. And if you don't have lavender, it will be even worse. You'd have just a lemon and then nothing but musks close to skin. And this will not fill the room. There's no way these musks will fill the room because it's just not their chemical nature. It's not their physical nature to do that. I'm not saying that there are no base materials that last long and cannot project, because vanilla is one of the materials that does this. It lasts long and you can detect it easily, but it's not common for materials that last long to do this. What would it look like if we had vanillin instead of these musks? Vanillin is like a vanilla material. So this, it would project well and it would last hell of a long time. So we would have the lemon, and then we would have the vanillin, and then it would slowly drop off. Can you see the difference? Here, we're using musks that don't project well, and this is what the perfume projection looks like. On the other hand, on the right side, we have material that lasts long but also projects, and therefore the perception is way better. It's stronger for a long period of time. But like I said, this is not the usual case because most materials don't do this. So let's skip this for a moment and let's come back to these two cases. We can either have a strong projecting citrusy fragrance that fills the room but lasts for 15 minutes, or we can have something that is not really projecting that well but it lasts a long time. A few minutes ago I mentioned hard notes, and you probably can guess why. And the reason is this. Let's say we have these citrusy fragrances at the top here, and we have these musks sitting at the bottom of the fragrance. So right now the projection would be like big spike and then nothing, just musks. So what would happen if we introduce the heart? Let's say we introduce lavender, which will last a few hours. We introduce rose, which will last a few hours. I'm not saying these are perfect numbers, but you will get the point, right? The purple is the heart in this scenario. Usually the heart is full of florals, maybe spices, something like that. But look what happens now. So this red line was the first one without heart, right? Without heart, it's like this. If we add in the heart, what happens? Suddenly, the projection curve expands like this. We don't have a perfume that flashes off in 5 minutes and then turns into nothing. Suddenly we have a perfume that lasts 4 hours, 8 hours, and we still smell it, but it still dries down for 16 hours. It's because we added the heart. And that's what I discovered is the secret, what you would call the secret, is because heart is where the perfume truly lives. The top notes, it's the introduction. It simply flashes off before you. It's like a little whiff. It makes you feel like the perfume is strong, but it's more like an illusion. And base notes, on the other hand, yes, they last a long time, but you can barely smell them. If you put it on your wrist, yes, you can smell it, but if it's on your neck, you will most likely not smell it unless it's a material like vanillin or something that projects well. But if you use hard notes, if you use the kinds of materials that last 4 hours, 8 hours, 2 hours, 6 hours, these materials together, they will last a long time and it's going to project relatively well. It's going to be the kind of material that you move your hand around and you can smell it. That's how I would describe them, is the top notes are the ones that fill the room. The heart notes are the ones that you smell when you move your hand around, or if somebody walks past you, you could get a whiff of this. And the base notes are the ones that you cannot smell unless you get close to the skin. This is why you need to use heart notes. That's the mistake I made in the beginning, is I totally ignored the heart notes. I did not understand what's the fuss about it until I realized that the heart is what you're actually smelling. What I'm truly trying to emphasize is, if you want your perfume to last long and project, you need to use the right materials. And try to map them on a scale like this, on a scale of how long it lasts, and how strong it is, how much it fills the room, on its own. When perfumers say learn your materials, this is one of the things that you should learn about it. How long does it last, and how strong it is on its own. And honestly, I would pay the most attention to the heart. I would start building out the heart for a perfume because that's where it lives, right? The top notes, they're a very short amount of time that you can smell them, and they project well, good, but the heart is the part that lasts a long time and you can actually smell it. I hope this was useful. This is my perspective on this topic at this point in time after 1 year. I may try to refilm this video 1 year later, or if my perspective changes. But for now, this is how I would tell myself about projection if I was starting out, because I did not understand that I need to use the actual long-lasting materials and the performing materials in order to get the performance I want, but I thought I could skip the smell and just get the performance. And I totally ignored the heart notes. I totally ignored the fact that they take up 80% of the fragrance perception, because the top notes are just a little speck and the base is also a little speck, even though it lasts long. I totally ignored the heart and therefore my perfumes, they will either last short time but project well, or last a long time and don't project. Is it because my heart was underdeveloped? Let me know if this helped you, and if you have any questions, write in the comments.